Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the U.S. Association of Former Members of Congress's 22nd Annual Statesmanship Award Dinner. Please rise for the presentation of colors by the Joint Forces Color Guard and for Vicki Golding, who will perform the national anthem.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say, does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Right shoulder. Ladies and gentlemen, please be seated and welcome to the stage the CEO of the U.S. Association of Former Members of Congress, Pete Weichlein.
Thank you and good evening. Wasn't that beautiful? Can we please have one more round of applause for Vicki Golding? Welcome to the 22nd Annual Statesmanship Awards Dinner, and thank you so much for being part of our celebration this evening. This is a working dinner, so please don't hesitate to get started with your salads. Tonight we're gathered for two reasons. We are here in part to recognize another amazing year for FMC, moving our goals and mission forward with outstanding programs that involve current and former members of Congress, all on a completely bipartisan basis. And we're here to recognize a truly exceptional group of honorees. Their commitment to serving their communities ranges from the members of the House Problem Solvers Caucus who have pledged to work across the aisle to move the country forward, to a pair of senators ensuring that our most cherished right, the right to vote, is protected from overseas attacks, to a multinational company investing every day in technologies that will make our air travel cleaner and safer, while also demonstrating exemplary corporate community service by coming to the aid of Puerto Rico after the devastating Hurricane Maria. All of our honorees epitomize the commitment to public service that is at the very heart of FMC, and we're proud to recognize their work tonight. FMC is a premier nonprofit focused on Congress, involving both former members and current members in our work on a completely bipartisan basis. We have more than 600 former members who contribute their time on a pro bono basis to our domestic and our international programs. In 2018 alone, FMC members donated over 7,000 hours to us. For example, our Congress to Campus program, which reached several thousand students across the country. We also have more than 150 current members of Congress participate in one or more of our Congressional Study Group events, which create a legislative exchange involving Congress and the parliaments of Germany, Japan, and South Korea, as well as Europe. And we included over 100 congressional chiefs of staff and district directors in our 2018 programming, again, all on a bipartisan basis. Thanks to many of you here tonight, as well as our wonderful foundation supporters and our corporate partners, and most importantly, thanks to my exceptional staff at FMC, 2018 was another banner year for us. Thank you all very much for that. Yes. It is now my great pleasure to introduce the president of our association, former member Martin Frost of Texas, who served in the House of Representatives from 1979 to 2005. Please welcome to the stage Mr. Frost of Texas. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Pete, for the kind introduction. What a great pleasure to be here tonight and to recognize this outstanding group of honorees. All of our honorees, each in their own way, showcase the tremendous power of working together for the common good. They demonstrate a commitment to leadership in their communities and to enduring, pragmatic solutions. They serve as examples of service and citizenship, and we are thrilled to be recognizing them. Senator Richard Burr of North Carolina has earned the public's respect for his even-handed and thoughtful leadership of the Select Committee on Intelligence. As chairman, he has made his ranking member, Senator Warner of Virginia, a partner in getting to the bottom of Russia's attempts to influence our elections. Senator Amy Klobuchar of Minnesota has become a pragmatic leader in the Senate by focusing on solutions and forging collaboration with her Republican colleagues to move the country forward. She is results-driven, which in Congress inevitably means finding common ground and negotiating compromise, for example, on prescription drugs or online privacy. In addition, Senators Burr and Klobuchar have worked together within a bipartisan group of senators to lead the way toward more secure elections and toward supporting states as they seek to keep their voting machines and election systems safe. These senators have put aside party politics and partisan bickering to safeguard the most fundamental right we all enjoy and cherish, the right to vote. Their bipartisan work goes to the very heart of our democracy, and we salute these two senators for their courage and leadership. The Problem Solvers Caucus is chaired by two of our honorees, Josh Gottheimer of New Jersey and Tom Reed of New York. The caucus includes about 4 members divided equally between the parties and demands from its members that they work together on a bipartisan basis towards solutions on issues ranging from health care to infrastructure to immigration. Members of the caucus from both sides of the aisle worked on the rules package and the creation of the new Select Committee on Modernization of Congress. That bipartisan effort aims to reform the way the House governs in the 116th Congress in an effort to break the gridlock. This important new committee is chaired by one of the Problem Solvers Caucus members, Representative Derek Kilmer of Washington, and we applaud the co-chairs of the Problem Solvers Caucus for their leadership. And our corporate honoree, Lufthansa, clearly shares the same commitment towards serving their customers and the communities in which they are active. Corporate citizenship has been part of the Lufthansa Group's DNA for years. While engaging globally, Lufthansa acts locally, for example, through its Help Alliance Foundation, and Lufthansa demonstrated its incredibly close ties to the United States when Hurricane Maria struck Puerto Rico. With over 400 employees in Puerto Rico, Lufthansa set up an air bridge to supply the island and sent an MD-11 Lufthansa cargo plane filled with over 90 tons of supplies, clothing, water, and aid as soon as the airport reopened. Lufthansa continues its commitment to Puerto Rico today, investing in workforce training and an apprenticeship program on the island. This is truly exceptional for a non-U.S. carrier, and we are so pleased that we can recognize the outstanding corporate citizenship of the Lufthansa Group. In just a couple of minutes, after you've had a chance to enjoy your dinner, we will focus more on our honorees and their work. Before we do so, however, I want to welcome some of the many VIPs we have with us tonight. Tonight is a celebration of what makes our republic so unique, a dedication to coming together, working together, good citizenship, and bringing tremendous resources so that together we accomplish great things. And while that almost certainly describes our honorees, it also describes the members, directors, volunteers, and staff of FMC. This evening makes our many domestic and international democracy strengthening programs possible, because even though FMC is chartered by Congress, the association receives absolutely no taxpayer funding to make any of its work possible. And it cannot be emphasized enough that all of FMC's important programs can take place because former members of Congress come together as a bipartisan group and donate their time and expertise for the good of the organization. As Pete said earlier, in 2018, that added up to almost 7,000 pro bono hours donated by former members of Congress to FMC's public service programs, such as Congress to Campus. This is truly wonderful. I want to thank many of the former members and current members who are with us tonight. You perform a public service that is vital to our democracy, and I want to thank you for that. Could all the former and current members please stand? Thank you. And while we're recognizing former members, let me highlight two of them who are here with us tonight. We are so pleased to have with us our dear colleague and our dear friend and colleague, Lester Wolf, a former member from New York. Lester turned 100 earlier this year. Which makes him the oldest and wisest former member of Congress. Lester, you honor us with your presence, and let's all please give Lester Wolf a round of applause. Thank you. And speaking of birthdays, Jay Kim, a former member from California, is celebrating his 80th birthday tonight. And he came all the way from Korea so he could do so with us. There he is. Happy birthday, Jay. And on behalf of FMC, I want to thank the J. Kim Foundation for being our partner and host as we're sending a former members delegation to Korea in June. Thank you very much. This FMC delegation to Korea is envisioned to be the first of many, and in addition to Jay, the study tour is made possible by the Korea Peace Sharing Foundation. The wonderful book you all found on your chairs is a work by the Foundation focused on bringing peace to the Korean Peninsula after the Korean War, and involving U.S. veterans of the war in their work to do this to this day. I ask that Pastor So of the Korean Peace Sharing Foundation please stand up so we can thank him for the books and for his great partnership with FMC. Thank you, Pastor. Pete Weichlein earlier described to you just a few of the many successes we had over the past 12 months. One of the main reasons we have achieved so much has been the exceptional guidance and advice of our executive committee and our board of directors. I thank you all for your time and energy. Also, tonight's a great night to thank FMC's truly exceptional staff for the great work they do. and for the successes our CEO, Pete Weichland, described earlier. Pete's first day with FMC as a program officer was 20 years ago, February 1st. Since then, Pete has been the driving force in taking us from a little-known alumni group to a truly impactful NGO that is contributing enormously to our extremely important national conversation about representation, representative democracy, and bipartisanship. I also want to highlight the incredible job our COO, Sabina Schleidt, who is such a huge part of our FMC success. Pete, Sabina, and the entire FMC team deserve a round of applause. One last thank you, and then I'll let you enjoy your dinner. My dear friend, L.F. Payne of Virginia and his co-chair, Mike Ferguson of New Jersey, worked tirelessly on making tonight such a huge success, and FMC is indebted to them and the other members of the dinner committee for their tremendous energy. Thank you. One very active component of FMC's work involves focusing on international relations with current members of Congress. That work is mostly accomplished through our congressional study groups, which is a bipartisan dialogue we create involving the U.S. Congress and the legislative branches of other countries, for example, Germany, Japan, and Korea, and our European study group. Another is our Diplomatic Advisory Council, which works with embassies here in D.C. for a dialogue on global issues. We are honored to have with us tonight a number of ambassadors and embassies, and I'd like to take a second to recognize them. We thank the following embassies and ambassadors for honoring us with their presence: Bulgaria, Finland, Germany, Iceland, Japan, Korea, Liechtenstein, Lithuania, New Zealand, and Switzerland. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. We'll resume our program with the award presentation and a panel discussion that will bring together our honorees. We're very excited that tonight's conversation will be hosted by Hallie Jackson, Chief White House Correspondent for NBC News. And don't forget that, like the last couple of years, tonight will include a dessert reception in the main lobby through which you entered. So save some room and time for that. I know you all have lots to talk about at your tables. So I encourage you to get that out of the way during dinner so that you and everyone around you can enjoy the panel discussion and afterwards award presentations later on. Please enjoy the dinner, and we'll get started with the main part of our program in just a bit. Thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage FMC board member Byron Dorgan, who represented North Dakota in both the House and the Senate from 1980 to 2011.
Well, thank you very much. It's my opportunity tonight to provide the Statesmanship Award to two United States senators, and I'm enormously pleased to be here. They are friends of mine and former colleagues. I thank all of you for being here tonight. I was just told that the ambassador from Norway is with us as well, so let's say hello to the ambassador. This event is a big success. It's pretty interesting to eat dinner in a building like this. There aren't other buildings like this in America. It's extraordinary. So, some years ago, I served 12 years in the House, 18 years in the Senate, and then I retired. And I was getting off an airplane in Bismarck, North Dakota, and a sweet little lady just grabbed my shoulder very lightly and said, "Senator Dorgan, I am so sorry that you expired." And I kind of knew what she meant. But as I thought about that, I thought there is really no expiration date for a former member of Congress. We continue to serve in so many different ways and love our country and are available to do what we can to advance the best interests of our country. Now, finally, I would say to you, John Adams used to write back to Abigail when he was in Europe, and he would ask the question plaintively, who will be the leaders for this new country of ours? Where will the leadership come from? And of course, that question has always been answered. It's answered in most cases by saying, in this room and in rooms just like this all across America, with people who say, I'll serve, let it be me, I'll come, I'll be there. That's what leadership is about. And it's why I'm so proud today to be able to introduce you to two leaders, of our country's leaders who volunteered to be public citizens and serve this country. And I want to now call up to the stage Senator Richard Burr and Senator Amy Klobuchar. Amy and Richard. I'm going to say a word about each of you. Now, let me, and I'll do it briefly, but I want to say that I served with both of them in the United States Senate. I know something firsthand about their virtues and their accomplishments. They worked together in the Senate to secure fair elections and to safeguard the integrity of our voting systems and to stop hostile powers from interfering in our elections. That's very important work. So let me ask you about, let me tell you, I guess. I could ask, but I'll tell you about Richard Burr. Quiet, sturdy, willing to stand up in a strong political wind and stand straight. I know his last 2 years could not have been easy, but we are lucky he's there. He makes a lot more progress than he makes noise. That's unusual for a senator. He puts country over party politics, and he works to find common ground. And one more point. Have you ever seen his car? It is unbelievable and nearly undrivable. That's a different story. And now let me say, Senator Amy Klobuchar. I know that you're aiming a little higher these days, but before you go, let us tell you how much we value your work in the United States Senate. You work to keep our country safe, to keep our elections fair, and to restore confidence in the promise of our country. We're lucky that you decided public service is your calling. Now, it is the case that bipartisanship is rare, but not extinct. And these two wonderful senators demonstrate that every day. Senator Amy Klobuchar and Senator Richard Burr. And I'm now going to present them with the Statesmanship Award from the former members of Congress.
To my former colleague, Byron Dorgan, thank you very much. To the former members that are here, thank you for your service to the country. Thank you for being a member of this organization and for the good work that the organization carries out. To my colleague, Amy Klobuchar, I can't think of anybody that I'd rather stand on the stage and receive a Statesmanship Award more than I would her. She has a history of her time in the Senate, reaching across the aisle, finding individuals that share the common interest in the issues that she's working, and finds a way to bring finality to that as it goes across the goal line and finds its way to a president's desk. If you ask, am I frustrated with the United States Senate today? The answer is yes. But I would remind those of you in the audience that are former senators, the institution works exactly like it was designed to. The 60-vote threshold of the United States Senate tells all of us, when one party doesn't control 60 votes, that bipartisanship is the only way to accomplish a legislative victory. So I hope you don't find it odd that Amy and I would be ones that reached across an aisle and found a partner and built a coalition that reached a 60-vote threshold, because we're here for outcomes, we're not here for the process. Now, I'll say this with Hallie in the audience. The media doesn't like bipartisanship. There's not a lot to cover out of that. The fights that we have or that that they think we have are sexier. And yeah, when Byron, before we got there, they used to get together and have a little liquor and play a little poker. There were a lot of things that were settled. If that's what it takes, I'm willing to drink and play poker again. I'm not sure that Amy will be able to run for president after we have that evening, but there also was a commitment that you didn't talk about what you did. And in the age of social media, that's all changed, and I've learned it up close and personal as it relates to being the chair of the Senate Intelligence Committee. And it was, in fact, the Senate Intelligence Committee that sort of broke open as it relates to the Russian interference in the 2016 election, that they used our own protections, the First Amendment, against us, that they used social media platforms to drive societal wedges. They didn't create the issues. They took the issues that existed in society, which you've always had, and they drove wedges and they magnified both sides of it. I'm pleased to say that from the work that our committee did, it was Amy Klobuchar and James Lankford that took to the floor of the United States Senate election security legislation that hadn't passed yet, but my belief it will pass before Amy becomes president.
Okay.
Now, I'm going to share something with the former members that are here tonight, and this is something that you absolutely do not know. But the freshman members of the House and the United States Senate have no clue as to who you are. And it really won't be until they've delved into the legislative process and they've looked at the legislation that they're passionate about and that they want to change, that they're going to understand the fingerprints of a Byron Dorgan or Vic Fazio or Mike Ferguson, House or Senate. Because it's those of you that were here that set the stage for what those of us who still serve have to work from. It's your good work that gives us the opportunity to work from that and build on it. And I never will forget, as a junior member 25 years ago now of the Energy and Commerce Committee, that John Dingell, a Democrat, took me under his wing very early on. And John looked at me and he said this, "Richard, spend more time learning than you do speaking." And he said, "You'll stay here as long as you want to." Well, the end of my life in Washington is known. It's not too far out because I've announced that. But I cherish what John Dingell told me because my time here has been more fruitful because of what John Dingell taught me as a guy who understood the institution and built off of what his father did for what he worked on. And it's on your shoulders, those of you that are former members, that many of us receive awards like Amy and I are receiving today. And we achieve legislative accomplishments, not because of something we created, but because of the work that you put into this process. So I've had the greatest achievement in life, and that's to serve for over 25 years the great state of North Carolina. But I've also done it with the realization that it has nothing to do with me. It has everything to do with the men and women that live in North Carolina. And that I'm required when I leave and I become a member of this organization, that not just the next senator that serves from North Carolina, but the people who speak to their children and their grandchildren will say, this is here, this land is protected because the United States Senate and the Congress of the United States and the President believed that permanent land and water conservation fund was important. That when the parents of a disabled child are at an age like many in this room, where jeopardy's probably more important at 7:30 than anything else in life. See, I can say that because most of my colleagues have their pajamas on and they're getting ready right now, aren't they, Amy? That they'll leave this earth knowing that because of what Congress did at creating the ABLE Act, enabled them to save money and to tuck it away so that that disabled child can live as long and fruitful a life as they possibly can without being disadvantaged under the tax code. I don't tell you these things because I did them. I tell you because the Congress did them. Because even though the Congress was set up to be a visionary body and we've turned into a reactionary body, that's not permanent. It just requires a lot of will on the part of the people who serve and the people that come to see us to change the institution. And I'm more optimistic today that we can do that regardless of what the makeup is, majority, minority, who the president is, because America is ready to demand results and outcome. So I leave you tonight with the words of Bush 41, the old guy. God bless his soul. When he stood on the west steps of the United States Capitol, he looked at America and he said this: "We're not the sum of our possessions. They're not the measure of our lives. In our hearts, we know what matters. We cannot hope only to leave our children a bigger car or a bigger bank account. We must hope to give them a sense of what it means to be a loyal friend, a loving parent, a citizen who leaves his home, his neighborhood, and his town better than he found it." I think Amy and I both believe that leaving our country better than we found it is our goal as representatives, and I know it is for the former members that are here. God bless you. Thank you for this recognition.
What an honor to be here and get this award with Richard Burr, who just whispered to me, "I'm running for president." There you go, what a great place to announce. But I want to thank him for his incredible service. We've worked together heading up the 911 caucus. But more than that, I have gotten to see him in action, working with my friend Mark Warner, heading up that Intelligence Committee at a very difficult time, and being willing to hold not just behind closed doors hearings, but public hearings so people understand what this foreign country did and what that means to our democracy. And we are a better country for the fact that Richard Burr was in charge of that committee at that moment in history. So thank you. I also am happy to be here with my friend Byron Dorgan. You know, a river doesn't divide Minnesota and North Dakota, it unites us, especially during times of flooding. And as I was standing up here, I remembered Byron when I was running for the United States Senate, my last big event at the University of Minnesota. We literally had a band playing the Rouser song. We had my face on this bus, you know, shrink wrapped around. It was super glamorous. I think Al Gore was there with us. And we get on this bus with all these people cheering. And Byron Dorgan looks at me and says, "You know, this is all really cool, but, you know, I think you're going to win. And then 3 months from now, you're going to be sitting alone in your office eating a tuna fish sandwich, trying to figure out what's going on the floor." How right he was. So I thank Byron for the leadership that Richard described, and for being such a good friend. So this has been a tough time for bipartisanship, as you all know, all you former members. And I do want to acknowledge my current members out there, Colin Peterson and Dean Phillips, two congressmen, and then also two former members from Minnesota who are here, and that's Eric Paulson and Tim Penny. So thank you all for being here. So for me, it all started this kind of era on the inaugural stage where we'll never forget that day a few years ago, but it was a day like no other for me. It was the day that I was officially displaced as the most famous Slovenian American in the United States by Melania Trump. That happened. I noted that she was born an hour away from where my relatives are from in Slovenia, and every time I look at her, it's like looking in the mirror. It's pretty funny. So I have, through thick and thin, including in this presidential campaign, and by the way, if you just sometimes people ask, no, I didn't know all that snow was going on my hair. And it was really fun to be able to watch a video of that 20 minutes and watch myself grow old in 20 minutes. But even through that, I have tried very hard to emphasize how important it is to get things done and to be able to work across the river of our divides and cross the sturdy bridge of our democracy that has been here for hundreds of years to a higher plane in our politics. And I was reminded of that as Richard just talked about Congressman Dingell. I had my own mentor on the other side of the aisle, and that was John McCain. And he took me all over the world. I was just talking to someone from the embassy in Japan who remembers this when we went to Japan. One of my fondest memories was the last trip we took to Ukraine and Georgia and Lithuania and Latvia and Estonia, where on New Year's Eve we somehow found ourselves in a blizzard. See, I'm always in blizzards, that's my thing, with the president of Ukraine, and on live Ukrainian TV, he gave John McCain a pistol, and he gave he gave John McCain a machine gun, a Ukrainian machine gun. He gave Lindsay a pistol, and I'm standing here ready to get my gift, and it's 2 daggers. That's a true story. And to the end, Senator McCain kept saying to me, "Who took my machine gun?" The Navy confiscated all the weapons. But Senator McCain, the very last time I saw him, was actually at the ranch, and my husband and I went to see him and Cindy. And at that point, he really couldn't speak very well, but he pointed to some lines in his book. And it was he had the page marked, and he said, "Remember this." And it was those words that he wrote where he said, "There is nothing in life more liberating than fighting for a cause larger than yourself." And I think all of you there who are former members understand how important that is. You saw it in John McCain at that 2008 presidential stop in Minnesota when a woman, remember this was in my state, said of then candidate Obama, "I have read about him, he's an Arab." And without missing a beat, John shook his head and said, "No, no, no. He's a decent family man that I just happen to have disagreements with." He did that a few weeks before an election. So that spirit is what brings a lot of us to that common ground. And certainly, as Richard mentioned, when it comes to another country invading our democracy, we have to stand up. And yes, we did get funding to bolster our elections, but we must do more and pass that Secure Elections Act, and Richard and Mark Warner are co-sponsors, which will allow for backup paper ballots and make sure that coming into the next election, nothing like this ever happens again. So I would conclude with one last Minnesota story, because the 2 things I want to leave you with in accepting this award is, first of all, that importance of not just standing in the opposite corners of the boxing ring, but understanding that courage is not doing that, but courage in Washington right now is whether or not you're willing to stand next to someone that you don't always agree with for the betterment of this country. That's the first thing. And the second thing is for those of you who leave public service or go on to a different kind of public service, that you keep having that light of public service and passing it on to others. I know so many former members that have done that, and it is just such an important thing. And one of my favorite stories about a former mayor, actually, was the mayor of International Falls, Minnesota, which is right on the Canada border, because as you know, in Minnesota, we can see Canada from our porch. And it's so cold in that town that they actually test cars up there to show they can make it through the winter. So this mayor was a decorated Marine who served for 14 years in the city council and then 14 more years as mayor, and his name was Jack Murray. And after he retired, he was quite old, but he kept wanting to give back. And so he literally every morning into his late 80s would go to the fire station, hang out with the firefighters, get a cup of coffee, put on an orange vest, and go and make sure the trash was off the road of the main street, with a sign that said, "I love International Falls" on his sleeve. And I happened to be at the funeral when after he died, and the priest told the story, and he said the morning that Mayor Murray died, he did the same thing. He rose early, had his cup of coffee, got that trash, and came back to the fire station and hung out with his friends. Now, I'm not saying you all have to go collect trash in International Falls, but I think that you all understand that your service doesn't end when you leave Washington, that your service continues by either mentoring young candidates and members at all levels, or by participating in your community. And I know you wouldn't be here today if you weren't doing that. So I salute you and thank you for that work. Thank you very much.
I want to thank both of them very, very much. If listening to Richard and Amy doesn't make you feel much better about America, you've had way too much wine. They are extraordinary, and God bless them for the work they do. Next, it's my opportunity to introduce to you Hallie Jackson, White House correspondent for NBC News. I just said to her, she's all NBC all the time. It's MSNBC, the Today Show. We could go on, but please join me in welcoming for this evening's host for a discussion that's going to be held with our House honorees and our corporate honorees. Please join me in welcoming NBC News' Hallie Jackson.
Thank you. That was great. I appreciate it. Thank you. Hi, thank you so much for having me. I want to thank FMC for asking me to come MC this incredible event. And it struck me as I was listening to the senators speak and to Senator Dorgan speak that there's a lot that you guys in this room and me as a journalist and my colleagues in the industry have in common. There's three things that really stand out. We all have a love for the institutions in this country that are what make this country America, whether that's Congress for you, whether that's the White House, whether that's the institution of democracy. My colleague Chuck Todd, who hosts Meet the Press, which you should watch, said to me when I first started my job as chief White House correspondent for NBC News, he said, you know, you're going to love the job. It's going to be an incredible experience for you. But the day that you walk through those security gates and you approach the doors of the West Wing and you don't get a little thrill in your stomach, you don't get a little bit of butterflies out of respect for this building, out of respect for the history of this building, that's when you know you got to walk away. And I think that speaks to what a lot of us feel as we cover this moment in politics, a respect for the history of this country, for the moment that we're in. And that brings me to the second thing that we have in common. Serving something, I think, as journalists and you as former members, as people in the diplomatic corps, serving a cause that's bigger than yourself. Working towards something that means something to you and that will leave a little bit of you behind when you go on to your next adventure. And that is something that I do think members of the media feel when we're covering the political sphere. And so I would say that the third thing we have in common, and if Senator Burr is still here, respectfully would quibble a little bit with what he says about the media not liking bipartisanship. I do think there are journalists who want to cover moments of bipartisanship. As you know, those moments are fewer and farther between. And that is sort of the moment in time that we are in, where partisanship is something that certainly gets clicks, it gets headlines, it gets views. Bipartisanship, as the speakers ahead of me have noted, get results. And that is what we're here to celebrate today. That is what we're here to honor. That is why FMC asked me to come talk with some of the people that we will be celebrating and honoring tonight. The theme of the evening is citizenship, the power of citizenship in the 21st century, what it means to work together, what it means to be a leader in this moment. There's a group of people, in addition to the senators, that we will recognize tonight because they showcase on a daily basis the values that FMC holds dear and that all of you are here to recognize. Public service, supporting the community, civic engagement, the power of being able to come together and find solutions. FMC has a number of honorees that we will talk about tonight, that we will talk with tonight, and I'm thrilled to be able to conduct that conversation. I want to start with our corporate honoree. The Lufthansa Group is represented tonight by its CEO, Carsten Spohr, who wins the award for longest commute to dinner. He flew in all the way from Germany to be here with us tonight. Please. And you'll hear this come up again and again in our conversation, the idea of citizenship, and specifically corporate citizenship. And for Lufthansa, as FMC has noted, this has been at the core of its value system for a very long time here. There's been a focus on strengthening STEM education, initiatives like the Help Alliance Foundation. That's a global engagement of Lufthansa and its employees. It's meant to empower education and entrepreneurship. FMC wants to especially recognize Lufthansa for something that you may not know about, the immediate and invaluable assistance that the company provided to Puerto Rico after the hurricane there, after Hurricane Maria. As soon as planes could land again on the island after that storm blew through, Lufthansa had been working tirelessly with local, federal, international partners to be ready to send one of its cargo planes with 90 tons of supplies. Since the hurricane, Lufthansa has installed a first-of-its-kind apprentice program to bring education and opportunity and real jobs to people in Puerto Rico and people in the region who needed them. So, Mr. Spoor, FMC wishes to thank you for everything that Lufthansa has done to be a bridge builder between the U.S. and Europe, and FMC wants to present you with the 2019 Corporate Statesmanship Award. Thank you for all you do.
Well,
when she gives you the award, go to the center for your photo.
thank you very much. As a foreigner, obviously, I received a briefing for tonight, and I was told if you receive an award in Washington, you have 2 minutes to say thank you. Since I did come from Germany all the way for this, I was going to ask you for 3, but as I just learned, it only doesn't allow you to have an extra minute when you come from across the Atlantic. You also get extra minutes when you come from across the street. So allow me to say a few words. It's a great honor for us to be here in Washington, and it's a great honor for me, representing 135,000 Lufthansa Group employees around the world. And being the first airline group indeed to receive this award makes all of us extremely proud. At Lufthansa, corporate citizenship is at the part of our DNA. And we want to make a difference, and we want to give back. And we do this, I believe, in meaningful ways. One, by investing in our workforce and in our training. And just, for example, when we opened our maintenance, repair, and overhaul company, Lufthansa Technik in Puerto Rico, we were able to train and to employ 400 people there alone. And there we have established first ever US registered apprenticeship program for this very specialized work which we do there, and we have been able to do that together with the US Department of Labor and the University of Puerto Rico. But we also do this, as mentioned, by standing side by side with our communities when they need us most, and either to build or to rebuild. And when Hurricane Maria indeed struck Puerto Rico in 2017, it didn't take long for us in Lufthansa to mobilize. And through our continued commercial success, we feel an increased responsibility for society and for the environment. And therefore, we continuously invest in the latest and most advanced aircraft. Just last week, we ordered 20 modern and fuel-efficient Boeing 787s and a few Airbus as well. And we invest a lot of money in green technology. We want to go to zero emission of all of our mobility on the ground within the next years. A lot of money is going into environmental and innovative projects. But also, as very nicely mentioned, we have our own charity organization, Help Alliance, where we are committed to social and humanitarian causes worldwide. And I'm very pleased to announce here tonight on this occasion for the first time that Lufthansa will expand its commitment right here in the US through establishing Help Alliance Americas. And thank you. And through this initiative, we will support social projects that promote US-German friendship, education, training, humanitarian, and emergency aid relief. And ladies and gentlemen, we want to give back,
and we want to build even more bridges between our great countries. And in this regard, allow me to say a few personal words about my experience embracing US-German relations, especially in times like this, which are not always easy. It was 35 years ago, I wish it was 25 years ago, it was 35 years ago when I was part of the US Congress German Parliament exchange program as a high school student. And I came to this country to spend a whole year here in the US. What a great program, please keep it alive. And it was the summer in '84 when 400 German students gathered at Frankfurt Airport to start their transatlantic adventure. Many of them, including myself, crossing the Atlantic for the first time. And we were all distributed on the various, of course, Lufthansa flights. And in my case, that was Lufthansa 454 to San Francisco. At those days, operating 3 times a week. As I stand here now as the CEO of Lufthansa, we operate to San Francisco 3 times a day. And that, I think, shows how we have built and increased the transatlantic bridge over the years. And in that following year in California, I not only had a great time with my American host family, I also experienced firsthand that our 2 countries are built upon common values and common rights. And our joint history allows us a unique and solid foundation built on trust, friendship, and freedom. And this experience has influenced my understanding of our transatlantic partnership until today, standing here in this wonderful occasion. And I'm very, very proud that I can pay back for that experience now on the helm of a major transatlantic player. Ladies and gentlemen, in this belief, I promise that we at Lufthansa will continue to build bridges by connecting people, by connecting businesses across the Atlantic with our, by now, 100 flights a day, 22 gateways in the US, and every day, 25,000 passengers moving from one part of the Atlantic to the other. And that is probably every day, including some exchange students who will contribute to the relationship of our great countries in the decades to come. So, ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of 135,000 Lufthansa employees around the world and 15,000 employees here in the US alone, I'm very, very honored to join you here this evening to celebrate citizenship. Thank you very much.
The chairman's going to take a seat for our conversation later on. What did you, oh, your award, please. Hold tight to that one. Tonight's final award is the House Statesmanship Award, and it is presented to FMC from the organization to the Problem Solvers Caucus. I want to welcome to the stage Congressman Tom Reed of New York and Congressman Josh Gottheimer of New Jersey to accept the award on behalf of the caucus, which they co-chair. You probably know what the caucus is. They bring together 4 lawmakers divided equally between Republicans and Democrats to work together across the aisle to find solutions on really tough issues. We're talking about health care, immigration. Members commit to seeking bipartisan answers, and they only endorse legislation when a minimum of 75% of the caucus supports the bill. So, for example, that includes the procedural reform package passed by the House earlier this year. FMC is pleased to recognize Congressman Gottheimer, Congressman Reed with the 2019 House Statesmanship Award, and I look forward to our conversation coming up in just a moment. So, gentlemen, please come to the stage.
Hey! Oompa!
That was, we meant that to happen. We have another award just backstage.
We have a problem.
We're gonna have
we
you-
solved it.
Which
It's
one was
fine.
that? Oh, that was so funny.
Come to the center of the stage, guys.
Which one was it?
Oh, it's yours.
That's me.
Wait, does anyone
We
have
have a
any
little
crazy
super
glue?
glue.
We're good. This is yours. Hold
Yeah, get them from. Kelly, that's priceless.
Great. That was great, by the way. That was great. I know. I should crack mine now, too.
No, don't do that.
Okay, here we go. No, you go first.
Well, thank you, Haley. That was very
Wait, there's nothing on
kind
the
of you.
prompter for you. Can you? Do you
There's
need
no
to see the
prompter.
prompter? We can't
I
see.
got to put this thing back together.
Here, I'll hold
so
it.
it's
I'll
like
hold
DC.
it.
We're rebuilding it. So, well, thank you very much for this award and for recognizing the efforts of the Problem Solvers Caucus. And I will just tell you, being up here with Josh, I can tell you that bipartisanship, friendship, as many of the former members here know, is really important in DC, and it's more important, even more so today. And so I'm proud to be here with my friend. And you all know sometimes in DC, saying friend means something derogatory. You know, the more friendship you refer to someone is oftentimes on the floor of the house. You're such a good friend. But Josh is a good friend, and we've developed a true friendship. And the Problem Solvers Caucus is filled with members that do have that friendship, that do have that relationship of trust that many of you here as former members of Congress know needs to exist in the chamber, and needs to exist in Washington. So I am humbled to receive this award on behalf of the Problem Solvers Caucus on the Republican side, but it's not about us. It's about these members, and it's about colleagues like the folks at No Labels, who I know are here today with Nancy Jacobson and her team. If you could give them a round of applause, because they have been at our back day in and day out to make this a reality. So thank you, Nancy, and to the No Labels folks. We really appreciate what you do for us. And without further ado, the best member of Congress,
Yeah, I'll hold this for you.
Josh Gottheimer.
Did you hold this one?
Okay, no, I got it.
You got
Go
it.
ahead.
Don't mess it up.
Josh Gottheimer.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. Is there a stool here? I got to throw.
I'll solve another problem. There
Thank you very much. This is much better. I first want to thank my really dear friend Tom. It was nice. We were just backstage there talking, and what you realize is we actually have gotten to know each other's families very well. We talk at least once a day, every single day, which is obviously disconcerting on several levels. But what we've learned in the caucus through the last couple years doing this together is that, and I think the former members who are here, who we're very grateful to be following, it's all about trust and relationships. And you can't solve a problem if you can't sit across from the table from someone and actually be candid and try to figure out where you can agree. And if you insist on getting everything you want every time, you'll never get anything done. And that's really the conclusion we've come to. We've been able to get together and get so much done working with the caucus because of that. And we have several members of the Problem Solvers Caucus who are here today, including our Vice Chairman, Tom Suozzi, who's in the front. But will all the Problem Solvers Caucus members stand up for a second so we give you a big round of applause? Believe it or not, we had a meeting this morning. We get together every week. We're in Washington, and we talk about what we agree on versus what we disagree. There is plenty to disagree on, as you all know. There's plenty to scream at. And as someone said earlier, it doesn't always make for the best television when you actually agree and try to find a common ground. But I think all the former members who are here and the diplomatic corps here understand that if you're going to get things done, you actually governing, right, and then the center is not always as sexy as other parts. But, I think Tom looks pretty good.
Okay, that's starting another scandal. All right there. Very good. No, but at the end of the day, what we stand for in the Problem Solvers Caucus is what I think all the former members here and members of the Diplomatic Corps represent, is that you came to Washington to help people. And what we're trying to do is to change the culture of Washington, D.C., break this gridlock, and at the end of the day, do the work for the American people that sent us here. And we're just blessed to be a voice for those American people. So thank you very much.
Hold on to your thing. Hold it. Thanks.
Congratulations.
Thanks.
How's that award doing, Congressman?
Oh, we'll fix it.
Okay, very good. Thank you. We're thrilled to be able to have a bit of a conversation here with the chairman, with the members of Congress that are here to talk about not just bipartisanship and not just leadership and friendship in your instance, but also citizenship and what it means to be a global citizen in the 21st century. I was told you all wanted to talk about Robert Mueller first off the bat, right? No? No.
I'll take a swing at it. No, I'm just kidding.
We do want to get into a bit of a discussion here about your roles and how you see yourself as leaders in this space, because that is why you're here and that is why you're accepting this award. And so, Chairman, I'll start with you, specifically on the idea of global leadership. You announced that amazing initiative to help build out in the Americas some of the give-backs that you do around the world. Talk through how you view being a global leader in this moment in history.
Well, I think globalization is the mega trend of our times. I think if anything has changed over the last decades is that this planet has become a smaller place, which sometimes creates new problems and sometimes helps to solve problems. And my personal view is bringing people together, making people exchange views across culture, across nations, is the best way to make this world a better place. And what better way is there than actually connect people, which is what we do in aviation. And usually when I give a speech and I don't receive an award, so I don't have to be as modest as I had to be today, I usually say that we are the good guys of globalization because we share that positive element of globalization for as many people as we can. Whereas in other elements of globalization, people are afraid that it could be to their disadvantage, that it has to be stopped. Protectionism has to come into place in this country and where I'm from. And this, I think, is the wrong way. And by bringing people together, I think we are developing global citizenship, which I think is a wonderful thing for the next generation to build on.
And on the topic of citizenship globally and here in this country, Congressman, how do you see your role as helping to develop that in your district, with your constituents, with the people that you talk to?
Go ahead.
Well, I think first and foremost, you have to listen to people, especially in this day and age when information is flowing so fast and coming at you from all different angles. And so you need to listen to their concerns. You got to really take it to heart and then really try to force the dialogue that I think needs to occur here more often. And I think in the Problem Solvers Caucus, that's what we do the best. You know, we're proud Republicans. I'm a proud Republican. I'm not afraid to say that publicly. I'm not afraid to shout that from the mountaintops because I believe in what the Republican Party stands for. But I'm willing to stay in the room with a proud Democrat and stay in that room until we can find common ground and listen to each other and understand where each side is coming from. And we do that with our district. We encourage folks back in the district to do that. We're trying to lead by that example. And you know, we have our town halls, we have our weekly press calls because we want to make sure people know that, you know what, we can shout and scream at each other all day long, but if we do that, nothing gets done, and all you're doing is not solving problems, you're creating more problems.
I agree. I just think it's what people want, what I hear back home, and I think all the members of the caucus here, because we talk about it a lot, is they want us to actually figure things out, right? They know we have real challenges and great opportunities, and we can't just come here and do nothing. They expect us to come here and get things done for them.
There is a perception, though, I think, for a lot of people in the country that Congress isn't doing much. I think people feel frustrated generally at this idea that Congress seems to be stuck. That is not new, necessarily. The former members who are here know that they have probably been through that as well. Do you get frustrated? And what do you do in those moments when you're talking the bipartisan talk, but nobody's actually walking the bipartisan walk?
You know, that is one of the things that we're trying to set a new bar for, is that it's easy to talk the talk of bipartisanship, but we're actually walking the walk. These Problem Solvers Caucus members are taking votes. You know, we stood together, had each other's back as they went into the rule reform negotiations with the speaker coming in. You know, former members in here understand, you know, to withhold your vote for the speaker of your party in order to negotiate something good for the institution, the good for America, is difficult. Is difficult to do because you're changing the way DC operates. And you know what I hope that demonstrates is that these are the true leaders, and this is what we're trying to do.
But yes, definitely get frustrated. And what's really frustrating is there's plenty of things we actually do get done all the time, and I think the former members know this, that they just don't get covered. Right, because we
over opioids bill, for example.
Right, we opioids bill on criminal justice reform we got done together. We've the Problem Solvers got together on certain budget agreements to help push them through and keep off riders that would drag them down. And there's on this rules reform package, it's not. I get it. It's not as exciting as some of the screaming matches. But these things get done. In the last couple of weeks, we got a bipartisan amendment passed coming together, and on campaign finance issues, And it doesn't all get covered, and that's actually what can be frustrating, because then when you go home, people say, you're doing nothing. You say, actually, we have moved the ball on these several issues, and it's only because we're taking the steps. And I know the other things, the noise, gets more attention, but actually we are in the room working on these things, and we just got to keep going, because I think that's what people expect from us and what we're supposed to be doing.
So, Chairman, what about your frustrations in the global space when you're looking at how to inspire people to be more of a better global citizen?
No, I think any leader needs to have a certain ability to live with frustration. Otherwise, you probably give up leadership fairly soon. When I listen to this, I sometimes wonder, I've always, as a visitor to this country and somebody who lived here, was sometimes jealous how large this country and powerful is, that you don't have to worry too much about what's happening outside. These domestic issues, I think, would be easier solved if the country was smaller and you had to worry more what's happening outside, and you would have less focus on those domestic affairs. So I think making the world smaller also probably means that the US has to deal more with those things happening outside, and the frustration level actually might be less, because there's so many things outside which force us to solve problems inside. But the frustration of things going too slow, of the frustration of sometimes finding compromises which we all think take too long, I think is a key element of leadership, at least of leadership which is based on empowerment of either people like you who have been voted, or somebody like me who has shareholders, staff, and customers to worry about. So only leadership which is basically somehow legible is what causes frustration. Those who just accept leadership because they propose it on their own might not worry about it, but that's not what we believe in. So I think that is part of what we have to live in, a world where people have to be convinced to be led. I think the days are over that you can just execute leadership without convincing the people where you lead them. I think those days don't exist anymore. Social media, people being better educated. We have to live with the fact that we need to convince those we want to lead.
Yes.
All of you have stakeholders. All of you have these people that you need to bring on board with you. You talked about doing it through social media, through some of these sort of more public ways. Chairman, how do you two find your stakeholders and get them on board?
Well, we engage, and we're not afraid to take some of these hard positions, and as I was saying, not just talk the talk, but walk the walk, and it's by communicating, and it's truly by listening. I think that is one of the things that I get frustrated the most down here in D.C., is people don't take the time just to listen. Right. You got 2 ears, 2 eyes, 1 mouth. And John Boehner, who's a mentor of mine, and history I think will judge him much better than maybe people judge him today, taught me that, is to try to listen more, observe more before you speak. But by engaging people, getting them to participate, that will allow democracy to flourish.
I think this is a very, very important point. And one of the things that I think Tom and I and the members of the caucus have learned, when we've taken on these issues, and you mentioned before, we have to get to 75% of us agreeing in order to get behind a piece of legislation or get behind an idea. And it's tough, right? Imagine you can't get 2 people to agree, getting this big group of people to agree, and 75% of us agree on something, and is challenging. It takes hours upon hours upon hours, 30, 40, 50 hours of work, sitting in a room. Usually we get together after our evening schedule, 8, 9 o'clock at night till 1 o'clock in the morning. We put up whiteboards, just members of Congress sitting in a room saying, and I hope the 4 members appreciate this, because I'm sure they did plenty of this. And it takes the patience and the time to if you're going to get somewhere, get to that agreement, to go through it. And we always say to each other, if America could see this, they'd feel a lot better about the process, because that's when you really feel great pride that you're doing what you're supposed to be doing. And what Tom said is what the eureka moments are always when you hear if you presume what the other side thinks, you're always going to get it wrong, right? Because you'll just assume there's a reason why they're not behind something. But if you listen, you realize, oh, I didn't realize that's their issue. Oh, I can get on board with their issue.
But to even get those people in the room in the first place, and this speaks to what the 3 of us had a conversation about backstage, you have to have personal relationships. There has to be a level of trust. That has been a theme that we've heard about tonight, that you've heard about in your lives in the diplomatic corps as former members. Chairman, talk about how you try to develop those personal relationships with people who you may not see eye to eye with, but who you need to compromise with in order to actually get something done.
Well, when I talk about leadership within Lufthansa, I always use 3 terms. Leadership for me is about having an ambition to improve something, a country, a company, a relationship. There needs to be responsibility, because when you execute leadership, You have power, so you need to be very responsible. That's why I talked a little bit about values in my little speech. I think joint values, the right values of this country, of a company, are very important. And the third thing is empathy. You need to understand what the people you lead or you're supposed to lead with think. And I think that doesn't matter if you're in politics or in the corporate world, to understand what people expect, how they look at you in terms of honesty. Can they really believe what you are saying? I think is key to execute leadership. And to bring that across to the next generation maybe is then the next element, because we're all in our positions only for a certain part of our life, and it's about having the next generation in place, like the senator said, to hand over in a better state, be it a company, be it a congressional district, be it a whole country. I think that's what I think leadership is we are supposed to be doing.
The flip side of when we talk about bipartisanship, of course, is partisanship. And there are those who see purpose in partisanship and passion in partisanship. And it is a driver on both sides of the aisle for creating political change and creating political progress. In both of your parties, I know that you've run up against that in various ways. How do you deal with it? How do you get past some of that?
I think you just keep challenging that extremism that often that voice represents. And partisan is not necessarily, you got to remember, a lot of these members, ideologically and philosophically, they have a position, they have folks that they represent that they have to be held accountable to. And so, what we try to do is just recognize that you're going to have that. But we're going to call out, the institutions that perpetuate this, the social media, outside groups that are raising money at $5 a clip, sending out emails that are thriving off this industry of partisanship and division. But at the end of the day, I think what we're tapping into, the greatest strength that we have, is that the silent voice of America is awakening. And it's saying, look enough, get something done. The country is facing huge obstacles, huge problems on the horizon. And if we stay divided, as Abraham Lincoln said, a house that is divided against itself will not stand. And we need to start uniting people and respecting people again and lead people in the way that I think Josh and the Problem Solvers Caucus members believe. Because we respect each other, we're willing to have the debate, but at the end of the day, we're in this ship, we're on this ship together.
And that's the whole point, right? I mean, I think Tom just really captured that. You have to, if you can have strong views, right? And I think Tom and I both have strong views. We have points of view, and the members of the caucus do as well. But the question is, are you willing to, for the sake of moving the country forward and governing, are you willing to say, I'll take 80 or 90% of my strong view, not insist on 100% of my strong view, and while I sit at the table and talk to one another to get it done, especially in an era of divided government?
So how do you get your colleagues on board with that, Congressman, particularly in this moment?
I think our job is to go member to member and show that we're. And by the way, you should see when we get things, we've gotten a bunch of things done. Suddenly the members come out, and this is, I think, they're part of the silent middle too, or this, right? Who say, "Wow, you actually got something done. You worked together, you got something done. What are you doing over there?"
We have some new members that have joined the caucus, and after the first 4 to 5 meetings, came back and like, "This is the best thing I do down here. I have, I get here, they divide us, and we have to go raise money. We have to go do this, and it's us versus them all the time. We have a safe forum where we have a culture of trust, where we have a dialogue, and most members, those freshman members as well as older members, will say, "This is what I came here to do. I came here to have this debate and find that common."
And part of that's changed, right, over time. I think some of the former members will tell you this, right, where people used to live down here. We all, we come in, we leave, and even so, the first minute you get sworn in, you meet during orientation, and then you leave. And you go to your respective sides. And there's very few places where you actually can come together and have a space where you can get to know each other and talk to one another and share ideas. And we're providing a space for that where you can do that. And then you build relationships and you build the trust. And I think the members go, wow, we're actually governing. This is what people send us here to do. And I think that's why our caucus is strong, it's growing, people like what we're doing. And it's because we've got great members who are committed.
Different settings for all of you, but similar challenges, it sounds like. And as we wrap up, I want to ask each of you, just briefly, a simple question here, which is in our theme of citizenship, and as we talk about how to be, all of us, better global citizens and better citizens in our communities, how do you challenge yourself to be a better citizen? And what advice do you give to those around you on that?
Well, I'm challenged by my wife, so I'll leave it with that. And now I think it's like we're doing tonight, to speak about it openly and to share also the fact that this is never a perfect system and it can always be improved. And I think last but not least, giving back can be very rewarding. We see with our staff, when they can give something back to their local communities, to people in need, they're having a huge element of happiness being from that. And that's why I think it's in a way justifying itself, which is so wonderful about it.
I think by waking up and appreciating that we live in the greatest country in the world. And when I tell Mike, I've got a 7-year-old and a 9-year-old, and I tell them, you know, appreciate how lucky I appreciate how lucky I am to be representing the United States of America and representing a district, and that they, and how lucky we are that we all stand on the shoulders of giants, like many in the room here tonight, you know, and those who protect our country, our cops, our firefighters, our veterans. And I think if you put it all in perspective, and the key is to just keep everything in perspective and realize that the fights and the skirmishes, you know, a lot of them, if you pull back, realize how, like, it's just in the scope of history, it's not worth the fight. It's actually, we just got to get together and get things done.
Congressman.
I think what you have to do, and Josh is hitting this, is remind people that we do live in a great world, and we live in the greatest country that has existed in that world. And what we have done, we should not be apologizing for our country. We should not be, we should be defending it. We should be inspiring people to recognize what America has done, what it has brought to the world in regards to empowering people and making people's lives better, and never take it for granted. As the son of a career military officer, Silver Star recipient, you know, who shed blood in Korea, as well as in World War II. You know, I take that to heart. And when I see kids and I see the next generation and I see folks maybe disengaged from America and say the glory days are behind us, no. The glory days are ahead of us, because the principles and the philosophy that we came here to fight for as members will ignite the world in a better place if we engage, and we're proud of it. Not give up challenging ourselves, not being afraid to show up and challenge ourselves as a country and as members. Keep doing it. Don't give up, because once American citizens give up and they disengage from democracy, that is truly when democracy dies. And it's not going to die on the Problem Solvers Caucus watch, and it's not going to die by the members of Congress that I know in Washington that came here to get things done.
And with that, one more round of applause for our honorees tonight.
Thank you. Thank you, Hallie. This is wonderful.
And with that,
It's broken on the top.
Hell, you broke it.
we're going to get some super glue for Congressman Reed. I appreciate Congressman Gottheimer's time. And Chairman, thank you very much for being with us. We want to remind you, of course, that there is the dessert buffet, the dessert situation in the back, so you should all take advantage of that. Thank you for having me, and we will see you all next year. Thanks.
Thanks, Hallie.
Good job, Hallie.
You're the best.
Oh my God. Literally, this is for my last.